All right, so today we're actually going to be working on a thing called the cosine law. I also call it the elbow law. And the elbow law is based on an angle or a picture that kind of looks like this on a triangle, where we have an angle with two sides on the opposite and the final side in red being the opposite to the angle. Okay? Now, in any missing triangle, this is what we know. The cosine law can be used to find a missing side, okay, and a missing angle, okay? So let's go over how this works, okay? Now, when we talk about the cosine law, where we have a missing side, here's the rule. We have a side, an angle, and a side. So in this case, in blue on this triangle here, make sure you put 40 into this corner of your triangle if it's not there. And here is the rule. If we look at this triangle, we have this side, and the angle. And that is why it looks like an elbow. It's like a flexed elbow, okay? And what we are looking for is this red side here. So basically we're using something that's very similar to, what is it called? The Pythagoras Theorem. And this is it here. C squared equals A squared plus B squared minus twice AB cosine of the angle between them, i.e. the angle C. So let's go and do the calculations for it. Let's go and color code. Let's go and color code the letters here. So let's say that's 15 and the green one is 10. So those are the two sides. So the two sides around them are added and squared minus twice two sides cosine of C. So if we're going to do this problem, let's go through the entire problem set and see what happens. All right, so imagine that we're looking for angle C. So we start with this. We start with saying that our triangle is given by this. Our triangle A, B, C, and we're using this basic equation. So now when we substitute, we end up with C squared equals, well, this. So you use the angles around to create the triangle, and then you minus twice the two sides that you know, and then you cosine the 40. So in this case, we have, here's our 10, here's our 10. Here is our 15 and 15 when we substitute. And then we have our final angle here, which is opposite to the original C angle. Now, if you don't know it, that's basically how, if you don't remember the equation gives you the basic idea of what it looks like, and you can use that for any equation. So now let's go and do the solution. So we have C squared equals 10 squared, which is 100, plus 15 squared, which is 225, minus 2 times 10 times 15, which gives us 300, and then we'll just leave cosine of 40. So now all you got to do is punch this exactly as you see on your calculator, and you're going to end up with C squared is equal to 95.186. And then to get C by itself, we're going to square root 95.186 to get it by itself, which means C is equal to 9.8 meters. And we're done. So the key to being successful at this, you're going to go and do this and this to get this and this. Then you're going to multiply this out and you're going to get 300 times cosine 40. And then when you want to pull it all together, you're going to write 100 plus 225 minus 300 cosine 40 times cosine 40, and then you're going to get 95.186, and then you're good. Now, what I want you to do, try that on your calculator. Try to get used to it with your calculator before you move on to the next part of the lesson. Now, before you move on, remember the equation for the side of a triangle is what I would call Pythagoras Theorem on steroids. We still have c squared equals a squared plus b squared, but then we have this extra bit, minus 2ab cosine of the angle c. So for the cosine law, it's c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus twice ab times the cosine of the angle between them, cosine of c. All right, let's move on to the next topic. We're talking about a triangle this time. Make sure your triangle writes out like this, is A, B, and C. All right. So imagine I am looking for this angle right here. I want to know what C is. So just like before, when we were doing our cosine law, remember our cosine law was based on the angle with its opposite side, okay? And that elbow helped us to figure out what our equation is going to be. Now, this only happens when we have a missing angle. And that missing angle, you can only find a missing angle when we know all of the sides, S, 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 when you know all three sides of your triangle. The pattern is this. Cosine C is a squared plus b squared minus c squared over 2ab. Okay? So let's go and try that. It's always the same calculation. It's always a squared plus b squared, just like this, right? But because we're dealing with sides, we have to subtract the c squared, and then we divide by 2ab. So let's go and do the calculations for this. Now, remember, we start with cosine of c is equal to the a's and b's, the sides around it, which is just, well, a squared plus b squared minus c squared, and then we divide by our a and b from our original equation, twice ab. So let's go and do the calculation. So we have cosine c equals this. I look at it this. I always start by saying, well, I know that it's 10 squared plus 15 squared minus 2 times 10 times 15. But because we're looking for cosine of c here, what we're going to do is we're going to minus the 9.8 squared as our final thing. So there is a pattern. Now, the rule is when we do these calculations, we have to simplify the fraction. So when we simplify the fraction, we must simplify the top first. So you have cosine of c is equal to 228.96 over, and now we have to simplify the bottom second. So we multiply it out and we get 300 on the bottom. Now that we've done that, we're going to simplify the fraction. That's right. We just simplify and divide it out. And that's going to give us a decimal. So you're going to end up with cosine of c is 0.7632. And now, since we're looking for angle C, we're going to go and do the cosine inverse of 0.7632. If you're not sure how to do that, make sure you go back to the primary trigonometric ratios lesson 1.1, to make sure you know how to find the angle of a cosine, sine, or tan. And when you punch that in, we're going to get the angle C is equal to approximately 40 degrees. And we're done. So let's go back over one more time. The reason why we call this the elbow problem is all of the problems are based on the elbow. The two angles, the two sides around the angle that's known, or the two sides around the unknown angle. Okay? Now, you have a missing side type, and then you have a missing angle type. You can use these to help you do your solutions every time. Okay? So now let's go on to our next problem. So imagine you have a triangle. So I'll give you a triangle, but I'm not going to tell you what it looks like. So the triangle is always going to look like something like this. Here is A, here is B, here is C, right? Okay, so now we have to go and identify side A. So side A is 5. So opposite of A is 5. So it's going to be here. So we're going to put A is 5. Meters. All right. Now, and it says C is 10. So C is 10 meters. Okay. And then the angle B is 50 degrees. Now, based on that, you know this is cosine law because there is an elbow here, isn't there? There's an elbow here. And because we have an elbow, we can use our equation. So think of it this way. When we use our equation, we think Pythagoras Theorem. B squared, okay, is equal to A squared plus B squared. A squared plus C squared. All right, so then we subtract twice of AC cosine of big B. So think of it this way. If you don't remember the letters, you just have to think of it this way. We've got the 10, the side that we know, the other side that we know, and then the missing side B that we're looking for. Right? So B squared is going to be 10 squared, and 5 squared added together, minus 2 times 10 times 5 cosine of 50. So let's go and simplify like we did before. So now we have B squared equals 100 plus 25, because it's 5 squared is 25, minus 2 times 10 times 5, which gives us 100. And you got to remember that in between these two things, we're actually multiplying 100 times the cosine of 50. So now punch all that in, and you're going to get the following. So now you got B squared is equal to 60.721. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure by calculating B is equal to the square root of 60.721. And we end up with B is equal to approximately 7.8 meters. And we're done. So remember, because it's the elbow law, right? And we're looking for the side, it's always B squared equals the two sides squared added minus twice of the two sides that you know, cosine of the elbow angle. That's it. And we're done. Now, here's what I want you to do. Do this problem again. Make sure that you can do all of this on your calculator and come to the same conclusion. So remember, when we are finding the measure of a side, you are given a side, an angle, and a side. And then we're just finding the opposite stuff that we're missing. Okay, let's move on to the next question. All right, for finding the measure of an angle, you're given all three sides. S, S, and S. You're given all three sides of your triangle, and then you are looking for an angle. Now, the reason why sine law won't work is because, remember, there's no sine sausage. So remember, when we had sine law, we had to have an angle and a side that had numbers, a number here and a number here. If we didn't find that, then you can't find the sine sausage. Okay? So now let's go on to our problem for the triangle XYZ. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to draw our triangle XYZ. So here is XYZ, here is X, here is Y, and here is Z. Okay? And we are looking for angle Y. Okay? So angle X is 4 centimeters. So we're going to write 4 centimeters here. Angle Y is 6. So across from Y is 6. So we're going to write 6 centimeters. So and angles and side Z is 8 centimeters. So just like before, we're going to take a look at the not the sine sausage. We're going to take a look at this. Since we know it's 3 sides, we know we got to use our cosine. So here we go. There's our 2 sides that we know around our angle. And then this is what we're looking for. Okay? So we're actually looking for this angle, Y. Okay? So in order to do that, we're going to have cosine of big Y is equal to, so you're going to add up the 2 sides. So it's going to be Z squared plus, let's go Z squared plus Z squared plus X squared. And then we're going to divide it by twice of ZX. And then we're going to subtract it from the known angle, the opposite side, which ends up being 6. So minus, let's call it big Y, little y squared. So now let's just substitute directly in. So if you're a person that likes patterns like me, you're just going to do this. Well, cosine Y is equal to, well, the 2 sides that we have. So we've got 4 squared. No, we've got 8 squared. 8 squared. So here's the first side that's around the angle Y, and the second side, which is that. So 8 squared plus 4 squared. And then we're going to subtract the side that we know, the side that is opposite to Y, which is, well, 6 squared. And then we're going to divide by 2 times 8 and 4. And that's it. So you end up with cosine of Y is equal to, simplify the top, you're going to get 44 divided by 64. And 44 divided by 64 gives us 0.6875 0.875. And that means cosine of y is equal to, not cosine of y, now we want angle y. So to get angle y by itself, angle y is going to be cos inverse of 0.6875. And that gives us our angle y equaling 47 degrees. And we are done. All right. So take a moment, look this over again. Trust me, you're going to need it. You'll hear me say, when I do this, I use mnemonics. I use the concept of angle, side 1 squared, side 2 side 1 squared, side 2 squared around my angle minus the opposite angle, the opposite side. Okay? That's how I get the top. And then I divide by the first two, then I divide by 2 times 8 and 4. It's kind of like following a pattern. All right, now let's move on to our last problem of the day, which is a word problem. All right, Ferd and his girlfriend got into an argument, okay? They absolutely hate each other right now because Ferd actually has bad breath, all right? And both storm off in different directions. The angle formed between their paths is 70 degrees. So the moment you hear something like that, you know you're going to have some form of triangle. So imagine this is my start. Let's call it S. And here is the angle that we walk by. Okay, and then we have this side here in our triangle. This, they say, is 70. So now we got to figure out whether this is a cosine law or a sine law or whatever. So let's figure it out. So after 2 hours, Ferd is 8 kilometers from the starting point. The starting point is S, so 8 goes here. All right, now his girlfriend is 5 kilometers from the starting point. All right, okay. So in order to figure out if this is a cosine law, we got to take a look. Is this a side, an angle, and a side? Now, another way of finding out if this is a, what would you call it? If this is a cosine law, also known as elbow law, we look. Hey, there's our side, and the angle between it. Boom, it's an elbow law. So that means we have to use some form of cosine. So let's see what else they asked. How far apart are the quarreling lovers to the 10th of a kilometer? Yep. So guess what? We're going to end up having to use a cosine law, but this time we're looking for the length. So we're going to start with, let's call this S squared. So let's call this S, little s here. Oh boy. So we're going to call this little s, little s. So S squared is equal to, well, you have to use the elbow to construct it. So in order to do that, we're not going to bother putting in, we can put in all the stuff that's here. So you could call it S squared, whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's call it S. Let's call it, and then this one will be F, and then this one will be Q for her name. I don't know what her name is. So we're going to have S squared is equal to F squared plus Q squared minus 2 times FQ cosine of big S, the angle between them. So now let's substitute directly in. So let's say that you don't like using letters. So we're going to have, okay, so you look at the blue elbow, right? And you say, okay, so we're going to have 8 squared 8 squared plus 5 squared minus 2 times 8 and 5, and then cosine of the angle 70. So now let's multiply that out. So if we do the math real quick, we're going to get s squared is equal to, well, do the math, you're going to end up with 61.638. Goes on forever. And then if you save that on your calculator right away and just put the square root of it, you're going to get the square root of the number, or the answer, 61.638, blah, 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 or you round it to 3 decimal places, get your answer, and you end up with S is equal to 7.9 kilometers. And we are done. So the distance between them is 7.9 kilometers. And we're done. Now, your homework is the following. And so your homework for today is page 39, 1AC, 2AC, 3 and 4, 7 and 10. So for these questions, you're going to find the side, you're going to find the angle, and then you're going to, for 3 and 4, you're going to have to figure out which ones they are, whether you're finding the side or the angle. And then there are 2 word problems. And then question 11 is a challenging problem.